This is the Wizard News for July 13th, 2020. Musical accompaniment by Dave Stryker with Bob Mincer and the WDR Big Band from the album Blues Soul. One of the members of the Rogers Park News Facebook group shared a February 19, 2019 post from Chicago Police Area 3 cold case. Sometime between July 4th and July 6th of 1984, Penny Krajewski was killed in her apartment at 6758 North Sheridan Road in the Rogers Park area on the north side of Chicago. The circumstances surrounding this cold case suggest that Penny knew her attacker or attackers. If anyone has any information on this homicide, please contact Area North Cold Case Detectives at 312-742-2687. RD number 84-248662. Trump campaign targets Univision's proposal to become 100% foreign-owned. The team tasked with re-electing President Trump is calling into question whether Univision's pending petition to become up to 100% foreign-owned should be approved in the federal review process now underway. The Trump campaign's attack comes as Team Telecom, the group of executive branch agencies, including Departments of Justice, Defense, and Homeland Security, is currently reviewing Univision's petition for national security, law enforcement, and public safety concerns. What apparently set off the Trump campaign was a letter from Brent Bozell, head of the Conservative Media Research Council, to the Federal Communications Commission. In the letter, Bozell asked the FCC to reject what he argues amounts to a foreign bailout of Univision if the Team Telecom advances the proposed deal forward. Under the proposed Univision buyout, Searchlight Capital would acquire all of Univision's presently outstanding equity interest from its existing shareholders, except for the ownership interest held by Multimedia Telecom. Searchlight would then split that stake in half with ForgeLight, the investment firm controlled by former Viacom executive Wade Davis. That would give Searchlight a 26.2% stake in the company, with another 26.1% held by ForgeLight. Another 11.6% stake will be held by Liberty Global, with remaining 36.1% controlled by Televisa, the Mexican broadcaster that creates much of the content aired on the Spanish-language television network. But Televisa isn't the only foreign ownership that would be triggered. Searchlight's three founding partners include a U.S. citizen, a Canadian citizen, and a German citizen. And Liberty Global is a privately held television and telecom company based in the UK. That would put Univision well beyond the current 25% cap on foreign ownership. But the buyers have pointed out in their application that the FCC previously gave Televisa permission to hold as much as a 49% stake in a 2017 ruling. They also said that allowing Univision to be fully controlled by offshore entities has the potential to attract new overseas capital to the U.S. broadcast business. Univision has pushed back against the Trump campaign's allegations, saying it has relied on honesty and rigorous journalism to cover the president. We will continue to meet our commitment and duty of informing the Hispanic community about his policies and his electoral campaign by embracing the truth and the facts, the company said. The global pandemic has infused doubt into the deal market, but a signal that the Univision sale is still on came during a telephone meeting last week between the Univision chair and the FCC chair. Univision pushed the FCC to complete its review of the deal as soon as possible. But no matter how quickly the FCC is prepared to go, it must first wait for the team telecom process to be conducted, and the FCC has also been asked by the Department of Justice to delay taking any action of the Univision sale until that review is completed. Univision's sale is the first major deal to enter the process since the Trump administration last month adopted a new procedure for dealing with proposed sales, including giving the Team Telecom a 120-day deadline to complete its analysis. If Univision gets that blessing, the proposed deal will then return to the FCC, which would also need to greenlight the sale before it could close. In order to clear that hurdle, Univision's buyers have committed to sell 3 low-power stations in Puerto Rico in order to come into compliance with local TV ownership rules. No radio station sales would be needed. Univision had been exploring sale options since last summer after an early attempt by its private equity owners was unable to find enough support on Wall Street to take the company public and allow them to begin liquidating their decade-old investment. The group paid $12.3 billion for Univision in 2007. Source: Inside Radio, July 10th, 2020. This is the Wizard News for July 14th, 2020. Musical accompaniment by Event Horizon Jazz Quartet with the song Chelsea Playground from the album Event Horizon. North Park's very own Nighthawk Chicago, the site of countless Northeastern Illinois University poetry and literature readings, is celebrating its 4-year anniversary. To celebrate, Nighthawk Chicago will be continuing its Cocktails to Go program with some of its most popular drinks from years past and a few new ones that are sure to become classics, including State of Grace, The Good, The Bad, and The Mole, in memory of Ennio Morricone, Birds of Paradise, Tiger Belly, and the Nighthawk Manhattan. Source: Nighthawk Chicago, July 10th, 2020. A neighborhood treasure in plain sight. Founded in 1877 by the Chicago Bohemian Freethinker organizations, the Bohemian National Cemetery is non-sectarian and open to all races and nationalities. Recently, our lives have been altered in unimaginable ways as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. History tells us 100 years ago, the 1918 through 19, Spanish flu similarly caused significant disruption and claimed the lives of more than 500,000 people in the United States. The records from Bohemian National Cemetery note it received special recognition from the Chicago Board of Health for its exemplary operations during the Spanish flu epidemic. Throughout its history, Bohemian National Cemetery has erected impressive memorials to help remind us of our country's significant tragedies. Monuments to the Civil War, Spanish-American War, World Wars I and II, and the Eastland disaster all occupy prominent places at the cemetery. It is noteworthy that Bohemian National Cemetery's crematorium columbarium building was formally dedicated in January 1919 as the Spanish flu was sweeping across the world. The mission of Friends of Bohemian Cemetery is to help preserve these important historical buildings and monuments. Their columbarium restoration project will help them safeguard this architectural and cultural treasure for future generations. Source: Janita Tucker on Facebook, July 10th, 2020. National TV political advertising up sharply. Trump campaign spending dominates. With the presidential election 4 months away, national TV airings of political advertising are sharply higher over the last 30 days, with President Trump's campaign easily outspending other political marketers. The most recent month, June 10th to July 9th, pulled in $5.2 million in total political advertising from all marketers, with 1,979 airings and 1.7 billion impressions, according to iSpot TV. Over the previous month period, May 10th to June 9th, $1.95 million was spent for 599 airings, yielding 867 million impressions. The Donald J. Trump for President campaign posted the bulk of the national TV airings at 1,641, with an estimated $4.6 million in spending. Democratic presidential contender Joe Biden came in at 38 airings and $145,714 in spending. Fox News Channel pulled in the most impressions for national political advertising with 288.5 million. CNN came in at second place with 94.8 million impressions, followed by MSNBC at 77.7 million. Source: Media Post, July 10th, 2020. CAN TV resumes limited production. After months of being off the grid, CAN TV is back and ready to help its nonprofit clients safely create new content again. CAN TV offers several options for safe content creation, including in-studio production. CAN TV has reopened its hotline studio, but with some new stipulations, such as only one person per nonprofit being allowed in the station at any given time, pre-recorded shows for the foreseeable future, and all guests being featured by way of Zoom. Nonprofit programmers can also Zoom from home and send CAN TV a copy of the recording, or use Zoom with us, in which CAN TV helps set up the recording session. Source: CAN TV announcement, July 13th, 2020. This is the Wizard News for Wednesday, July 15th, 2020. Musical accompaniment by Steve Slagle Trio with the song Believer from the album Alive in Harlem. Legislators introduce Plastic Waste Reduction Recycling Act. U.S. Representative Haley Stevens of Michigan and Representative Anthony Gonzalez of Ohio have introduced the Plastic Waste Reduction Recycling Act as a bipartisan legislation to reduce plastic waste and improve the global competitiveness of the U.S. plastics recycling industry. The Plastic Waste Reduction Recycling Act directs the establishment of a plastic waste reduction and recycling research and development program, calls on the federal government to develop a strategic plan for plastic waste reduction, and calls for the development of standards for plastics recycling technologies. The proposed legislation would help improve global competitiveness of the U.S. plastics recycling industry, establish an interagency committee, and coordinate the program to develop a strategic plan for plastic waste reduction and recycling and plastic waste remediation, carry out research, and provide metrology basis for standards development for plastics recycling and related technologies. Develop a clearinghouse to support dissemination of the tools, guidelines, and standards supported by the program. Support research and other activities on advanced recycling technologies, plastic waste remediation, and the public health impacts of microplastics, and public health impacts of microplastics, and authorize funding for 5 years and invest $85 million in 2021 for these activities. Source: Recycling Today, June 16th, 2020. Economics Professor Emeritus Edward Stuart was a guest on Chicago Tonight on July 7th to discuss COVID-19's impact on the U.S. service sector. On June 15th, Stuart received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the American Production and Inventory Control Society, Chicago chapter. Source: Noteworthy at Northeastern, July 10th, 2020. This is the Wizard News for July 16th, 2020. Musical accompaniment by Jason Cao Huang. Words Asleep, Spoken Awake, Part 1. From his album, Human Rights Trio. The other infectious diseases spreading in the shadow of the pandemic. A new study in the Lancet Global Health estimates that deaths from tuberculosis could increase by 20% over 5 years, and deaths from malaria by 36% if COVID-19 runs rampant in areas where these illnesses are prevalent. Others suggest that the impacts could be even worse. We know that previous disruptions to anti-malaria efforts, such as during recent Ebola outbreaks, led to thousands of additional deaths from the mosquito-borne virus. And polio, which has been on the cusp of global eradication in recent years, could come surging back in places that have been working diligently for decades to eliminate it. Even in the U.S., where we have vanquished many of the most devastating infectious diseases, once rare illnesses may rebound. As people stay home and forego routine medical care, including scheduled vaccinations for children, preventable diseases like measles and whooping cough will have more unprotected people to infect. And that puts not only more people at risk, but also more strain on the healthcare system. Lack of trust in health services can persist after the outbreak is over, especially if populations feel their needs were not addressed during the outbreak, or they were otherwise marginalized. The pandemic has fueled an outbreak of distrust in expertise. This threatens not only the fight against COVID-19, but also just about every arena of public health. From seeking care when you're sick to getting your children vaccinated against the measles on time. Source: Vox, July 14th, 2020. Philips V60 ventilators may shut down unexpectedly due to premature component failure. A potential for premature failure has been detected in subset of Philips V60 ventilators, which could pose a risk for patients or users. A solder connection on the first generation power management printed circuit board assembly of affected V60 ventilators is subject to solder connection failure. This solder joint connects a component designated as R31 to the PCBA. In the most common failure mode, the solder joint, estimated to be less than 1 in 650 devices, the failure will cause the blower to lose power, spool down, and trigger a visual and audible high-priority check vent alarm to alert clinicians to switch the patient to alternative ventilation. This failure mode is referred to as an open failure. a significantly less common failure mode was identified in which the solder experiences an intermittent connection. The intermittent connection disrupts expected operation and triggers the unit to shut down unexpectedly. Should this intermittent failure occur, the ventilator will shut down without issuing an alarm. In the event that the open failure mode occurs, the ventilator will cease to ventilate the patient, but will appropriately alarm to notify clinicians. This may lead to moderate patient hypoxemia, reduced blood oxygen level. In rare cases of an intermittent solder joint failure, an unexpected shutdown will occur, ceasing ventilation without appropriate alarming and indication. Clinicians will not be alerted to the shutdown by the V60 ventilator alarm, which could lead to hypercarbia, excess blood carbon dioxide level, and severe hypoxemia if the loss of ventilation is not otherwise promptly recognized. Adverse reactions or quality problems experienced with the use of this product may be reported to the FDA's MedWatch Adverse Event Reporting Program. This notice has been reported to the appropriate regulatory agency. Philips apologizes for any inconvenience caused by the problem. Source: Field Safety Notice from David McGrath, Head of Quality and Regulatory, HRC, February 2020. This is the Wizard News for Friday, July 17th, 2020. Musical accompaniment by Dave Stryker with Bob Mintzer and the WDR Big Band with the song Stan's Shuffle from the album Blue Soul. Rogers Park resident and Lane Tech Rising senior Tayiba Chowdhury named 2020 Bank of America Student Leader. Lane Tech College Prep High School Rising Senior Tayiba Chowdhury is just one of 300 high school students nationwide and one of just 5 in Chicagoland to be recognized as a 2020 Bank of America Student Leader. For the past 2 years, Tayiba has accumulated more than 150 volunteer hours supporting causes that are important to her. She is a longtime volunteer at the Rohingya Cultural Center, where she tutors immigrants impacted by the Rohingya genocide, sharing her own experiences as a means to encourage students to pursue higher education regardless of their socio-economic means. Last year, after recognizing an increase in cancer diagnoses in her community, she spearheaded a successful fundraiser for the Breast Cancer Research Foundation and, additionally, used the fundraiser as a springboard to share important educational resources with students in her school. Tayiba is currently enrolled in a 2-year program with Chicago Eyes, Educators and Youth Enjoy Science on Cancer, a cancer research training program where she works full-time in the laboratories of cancer researchers at the University of Chicago. Complementing her rigorous research training are a cancer-based summer lecture series, year-round career development, and skill-building workshops. While working with the organization, she recognized the lack of minority involvement in the STEM field and plans to encourage minority students like herself to pursue careers in the field. She is actively involved in Lane Tech College Prep High School, serving as both a freshman mentor and tour guide. Tayiba is also president of the Leaders Club, vice president of the Technovation Club, and Vice President of Technology for the Girls in Engineering, Mathematics, and Science Club. Last year, she created a henna club at her school, where she taught students about henna art and her culture. Tayiba looks forward to concentrating on computer science, debating, medicine, or environmental science when she heads to college next year. Source: BCW. Burson, Cohen, and Wolf, on behalf of Bank of America, July 10th, 2020, and shared on Rogers Park News. The number of silent stations stabilized in June after a record high in May. As of June 28th, 373 stations were off of the air, according to data compiled by Inside Radio Precision Track, a decrease of 4 stations from 377 in May, which marked a 12-month peak. 35 stations went silent in April, while most of the country was in lockdown mode, and new coronavirus infections were surging for the highest month-over-month spike in stations turning off their transmitter. That took the total to 369, up from 334 in March. From March 11th, the date the World Health Organization declared the coronavirus a global pandemic, to April 28th, 45 stations signed off the air. Of them, 17, or 38%, specifically listed financial conditions due to the coronavirus pandemic in their Special Temporary Authority application filing with the FCC. Looked at year over year, there were 10% more stations off the air in June 2020 than in June 2019. In early July, 2 more stations went dark. Apart from an increase in stations that went silent, there were gainers and losers among individual formats in the latest monthly data. The variety format had 12% more stations in June 2020 compared to 1 year earlier for the biggest gain. The catch-all variety umbrella format classification includes hundreds of non-commercial stations. Among more mainstream formats, Classic Hits and Hot AC Adult Contemporary were the biggest year-over-year gainers, each up by 5% in station counts since June 2019. Other mainstream gainers include Spanish, Religion, which includes teaching and variety, and Contemporary Christian. Each grew their station counts by 4% from June 2019 to June 2020. Oldies lost the most signals during the past year, dropping 7% from 347 to 322. Some of that is likely due to stations converting to classic hits to keep delivering the demos advertisers are seeking. Source: Inside Radio exclusive, July 16th, 2020. Kevin Chesniak, Executive Director of LINECO, will be presenting to the Northeastern Illinois University community and to the ECON 339 Cancer Health Policy Data Science class in a virtual presentation today, Friday, July 17th. Chesniak will speak about his role, how he uses health data as a tool to manage the health care of plan members. LINECO is a union health plan providing health benefits to more than 100,000 people. Kevin is in a unique role of both providing benefits to plan members and buying the health care services for the group. Source: NEIU Targeted Announcement, July 15th, 2020.